Vrogros the Underlord has teleported in to control the battlefield. With his massive AoE spells, he's able to control a wide area during fights and chop his enemies down with ease. Hold on to your butts, it's the history of Underlord. Hey, also, I've started streaming on Twitch and I plan to make it part of my regular schedule. Currently doing Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays for now, from noon to 4 PM Pacific, and I hope to see you there. Please follow me at Dennis the Tall. Any and all support is much appreciated. Now, back to the show. Underlord is a melee strength hero who acts like a commander for your team. He can cover a large area with his spells, lower the enemy's damage output, and even zip you around the map to take objectives, or to get out of a nasty situation. His first ability is Firestorm. This calls down several waves of fireballs over an area. Each wave will deal a base amount of magic damage, and then burn the affected units for a percentage of their max health each second for a few seconds. A spell that you're sure to get familiar with, Firestorm can be used to farm pretty consistently between waves and the jungle, and its moderate duration means that you can get a few casts of the spell off during a team fight. This is Underlord's primary damage dealing and farming skill, and you can pick up a talent that lets Firestorm damage buildings, making it a very safe yet aggressive sieging tool as well. Next up, we have Pit of Malice. This conjures a deadly pit at a target location, and causes any enemies to be rooted in the area for a moderate duration. The pit will stay up for a good amount of time, and enemies will be rooted again after a few seconds if they happen to be in the AoE. This spell's value comes from denying the area where the enemy team can be. If placed at the right choke point, this will force your enemies to think twice about how they want to approach you. Vrogros' third ability is Atrophy Aura, a passive spell that causes nearby enemies to lose a percentage of their base attack damage. If an enemy unit or neutral dies within the AoE, Underlord will gain temporary bonus attack damage for a long time, and if an enemy hero dies nearby, he'll get a larger temporary attack damage buff, as well as a permanent damage boost for the rest of the game. Atrophy Aura has what can only be described as a big-ass range, and his natural tankiness only makes it easier for him to casually assert his dominance. Because of this skill, Underlord can be a viable late-game carry the longer the game goes, since his scaling is like Olive Garden breadsticks. Unlimited. Underlord's ultimate is Dark Rift. This lets you target a friendly unit or building on the map, and after a short delay, Underlord and all nearby allied heroes are teleported to the location. If things go awry for any reason, you could always cancel it, and if either Underlord or the targeted unit dies, the spell will be forcibly cancelled. This is a high utility spell that does require some coordination with your teammates to use effectively, but if you manage to pull it off, you and the boys can win free trips to the fountain, actively rotate around the map, or save your allies from a beatdown. With his gigantic abilities, even a beginner can control the combat zone, but how you work with your teammates will ultimately decide your fate. Will you be able to lead your team to a decisive victory, or are your skills simply the pits? Underlord started his legacy in Dota All-Stars, although he was known as Asgalor the Pit Lord. He debuted in patch 6.44 on June 3rd, 2007. His name, model, and lore are all based on Asgalor of Warcraft 3 fame, who was a Pit Lord who served under Manaroth. His in-game lore is even a quick rundown of the character. One of the many regents of Lord Archimonde who became stranded on the physical plane after the Legion fell in Kalimdor, the devil Asgalor's love of destruction allowed him to accept the Lich King's invitation to help the Scourge in conquest with few regrets. After all, this Pit Lord is happiest when he conjures fire to scour his opponents from above, roasting them slowly as the dead literally explode from beneath their feet. With such hateful power in the hands of a monster such as this, it's no wonder he inspires so much terror as he roams across the battlefield. Since Asgalor the Dota hero is based on Asgalor the Warcraft character, his entire presentation naturally meshes well together. His voice responses present him as a large, monstrous, demonic figure, and it's the perfect tone for this beast of a unit.
I come from the darkness of the pit. I go to destroy. You fail to amuse me. Pitiful.
His original skills out the gate still focus on large AoE control, but they have key differences that make them noticeably distinctive. Firestorm is perhaps the most untouched of all his spells. It called down 6 waves which deal a base amount of magic damage, and 2 additional seconds of burn damage, but the burn damage was a flat DPS rather than scaling with their max health. It still has the same application of farming and harassing, but it definitely falls off in the late game. Pit of Malice was still a large circular route, but it would only apply the effect once, so if you do manage to get someone in the spell, that's the end of the story, but the original duration went all the way up to 3 seconds at max level. This effectively made it a massive AoE initiation, able to lock down a whole team for a significant amount on a relatively low cooldown. Before the time of Atrophy Aura, the Pit Lord had Expulsion. This spell would first require for an area to have corpses left behind by units that recently died. Pit Lord could target the area, igniting a corpse to deal a small amount of magic damage, and apply a mini-stun. The detonations will then trigger other corpses until all of them are gone from the area. This was a really interesting mechanic, as it depended on corpses which would most likely come from creep waves clashing, so it would be most effective in the lanes as opposed to the river or jungle. That said, its unreliability made the spell a bit weak overall, but later changes would make it more viable. His original ultimate was Dark Portal. This spell could be cast at any point on the map, including the enemy base. After a brief channeling period, a portal will be created both at the casted point and right in front of Asgalore. If you click on either portal, you will be instantly teleported to the other one. This spell was like a prototype Dark Rift, but it just had so many more uses. For instance, you could cast this on your fountain while in lane, regenerate whatever you need to, and walk back into your lane to carry on your day. Or you could cast it across the map to save an ally who's getting ganked. This truly was a global spell though, and if you want to place the portal right in front of the enemy fountain, who's gonna stop you? Either way, this ability captures the essence of a great ultimate, as it was both powerful and the huge portals looked like a big deal. Soon after his debut, 6.44b addressed a few issues with Dark Portal. It could no longer target inside base areas, could no longer target areas where the player has no visions at level 1 and 2, and units could no longer go back and forth between the portals, making it a one-way trip. Furthermore, the portal duration was increased to 1 minute at each level for some reason, so you'd have these massive eyesores taking space on the map, even if you wouldn't be able to go back and forth between them. This seems like a more balanced version of the spell, and arguably what it should have been released as. Unfortunately, the spell was very short-lived as it was replaced with Dark Rift in 6.45. This version of the ultimate is near identical to its current form, but it does differ on two major points. First, it is a channeling ability, so you do have to be stationary and hope that a stun or silence doesn't come your way. Second, this can only target allied buildings at level 1, gaining the ability to target creeps at levels 2 and 3, so its full usefulness only comes as you level it up. In 6.49, the channeling aspect of Dark Rift was dropped in favor of making it cast on a delay, which made it easier to use and left Asgalore a lot less vulnerable if he wanted to teleport somewhere. In 6.50, all of Pit Lord's basic abilities had some adjustments. Firestorm had its cast range and radius increased, Pit of Malice's root duration was increased, while its pit duration and cooldown were decreased, and Expulsion had its cast range increased, while its mana cost and cooldown were reduced. Overall, pretty solid buffs to Pit Lord's fighting potential, allowing him to cast his spells more frequently. In 6.52, Dark Rift gained a quality of life update where it could be cast on the ground or minimap, and it would choose the closest valid target within 3,500 units of the targeted point. 6.63 gave Dark Rift a visual effect to show off its teleport radius. A nice touch considering that there was honestly no indication of how big the radius was, or that the teleport was even going to happen. This at least allowed you to give your teammates a heads up before you jettison them out of there. In 6.69, Dark Rift's radius was increased, and in 6.71, its cooldown was reduced at all levels. Are you sick of hearing about Dark Rift yet? Me too. Luckily, in 6.72, Pit Lord received a mini rework that would make his skills synergize more closely with each other. Firestorm became a channeled ability that would call down 3 waves instead of 6, and its numbers were adjusted to make up for the difference in damage. Most notably, the spell could now damage buildings, letting him lay waste into an enemy high ground while staying away from all the riffraff. Pit of Malice had its root duration reduced, but it now deals 100 damage to enemies caught, making it a solid pick at level 1 for the mix of harass and crowd control. It also created 5 corpses inside of the pit, which leads me into the reworked Expulsion. The corpse explosions now occur around Pit Lord instead of a targeted area, and the mini-stun aspect was dropped. In its place, the explosions would actually heal allies. This also had an instant cast time, so it would behave a lot like Leshrax's Diabolic Edict, but you are still beholden to casting this around corpses, whether you create them yourself or fight over a creep wave. Also, Dark Rift can be cast on units at level 1. Sorry, that spell's just had a lot of adjustments. This rework was a great way to highlight his AoE capabilities, but the channeled nature of Firestorm made him feel a bit clunky, since he'd have to be stationary for that spell, while Pit Lord up until this point could control a battle while moving around. In his last major update before being ported over to Dota 2, 6.75 reverted the Firestorm changes from 6.72, making it a spell that you could throw at your enemies without a care once again. Dark Rift also gained a sub-ability that would allow you to cancel the teleport early, and most importantly, Expulsion was replaced with Atrophy Aura. The spell existed in a simpler form as Diffusion Aura on Necrolite, but this spell would grant Pit Lord temporary bonus attack damage for nearby dying enemy units. It should be noted that during this patch, the spell did not give Asgalor permanent bonus damage. Pitlord provided a great amount of utility that the world of Dota both needed and embraced. While he has deviated from his initial run, Asgalor's significance to the game is anything but pit-teat. The Pitlord doesn't make any direct cameo appearances in other MOBAs, but traces of his skills can be found elsewhere in case you might be interested. In Heroes of Newerth, Nymphora is probably the closest to Pitlord's concept, although the devs do take the character in a different direction. First off, she's a fairy, so it's not the big scary quadrupedal demon that you might have in mind. And in short, she has Volatile Pod, which is a large AoE spell that deals magic damage to enemies and heals allies, Grace of the Nymph, which gives an ally movement speed and mana restoration over a few seconds, as well as Nymphora's Zeal, which shoots out a projectile in a line that returns to her, dealing damage and stunning both on its way out and on the way back. Her ultimate is similar to Dark Rift and is simply named Teleport. This allows her to select a target location, and after a brief channeling period, teleport her and nearby allied heroes to the area. Picking up a Staff of the Masters will cause the name to change to Mass Teleport, and will cause the spell to have a reduced cast time, increase the number of teleported heroes, and improve teleport radius, in addition to casting Volatile Pod, Grace of the Nymph, and 4 instances of Nymphora's Zeal at the teleport location. She's not quite the tanky forefront of a team, but Nymphora is able to use her spells to control the area of a fight and bring her allies around the map. League of Legends has a couple of champions that I'd like to bring up. Veigar's Event Horizon forms a circular cage that stuns enemies who pass through it the first time, which is functionally and visually similar to Pit of Malice. This spell is used as general crowd control, but it has a clear synergy with one of his other spells, Dark Matter. This calls down a meteor from the sky after a short delay, dealing massive magic damage once it lands. The way it deals damage is different, but the visual of the spell, along with the combo with Event Horizon, gives it parallels to Firestorm. There's also Rise, who's currently on his 7th rework? Rise's ultimate, as of this video, is called Realm Warp. This will create a portal a moderate distance away, as well as at the initial cast point, and after a brief channel, every ally in the portal will blink to the target location, and become untargetable for a bit. It's fairly similar to Dark Rift in the sense that it's used to proactively initiate onto the enemy, but it can also be used to escape in a pinch. So there you have it. The most analogous characters to Asgalor are a fairy, a cartoon villain, and Purple Hakushi. Not how I would have handled it, but are you somehow telling me that a big purple dinosaur isn't marketable? That is objectively incorrect. The Pitlord stormed his way into Dota 2 as the Underlord, officially coming in on August 23rd, 2016, around patch 6.88c. His official unveiling was a thing of hype in and of itself. During the TI6 All-Star game in August 2016, a 10 vs 10 match occurred, with a mix of pro players and random audience members on each side. The game started as normal, and the crowd was prepared for a giant clash down mid, and just as the action was about to start, the pause screen reared its ugly head. It was at this point that the audience was greeted by none other than the Underlord himself, bamboozling an entire stadium's worth of people. Pretty genius on Valve's part, the 10v10 setup meant that Underlord would be able to show off his spells in the best way possible, damaging and controlling heroes with ease, while gaining tons of damage with Atrophy Aura. His inclusion marked a pretty momentous occasion. Pitlord was the final hero in Dota All-Stars to be added into Dota 2. For reference, Techies was in the game for a whole 2 years before Pitlord. Think about that for a bit. This is all the more strange because it seems like they had concept art, textures, and beta icons since 2013 or so. In any case, the general design concepts look consistent throughout the different interpretations. They stay true to the Pitlord's quadrupedal design. They all have spiky demon horns, and all the armor suggests that the plan was always to make him a general or commander. All of them also have these wacky demon weapons. You can tell they're demonic because they're pointy. And this guy, I'm pretty sure he's got a gun. Looking into an early model, you can see how it evolved into his current look, as it has the general shape, but I'm wondering what could have been if Underlord was dual-wielding bone cleavers. His ability icons also had a little more effort put into them than your typical affair, and goodness gracious, that original Atrophy Aura is creepy. Underlord's look in the end does a good job of conveying his oppressive personality, and his large, slow-moving body is a good match for his tanky but slow stats. But what about his name? Well, he clearly couldn't be called Asgalor or Pitlord due to Blizzard owning the character, and the race being prominently featured in the Warcraft series. According to the Bastion announcer pack, a voice line refers to the character as Pyre Lord, being distinct while keeping the acronym the same. I would have loved for this to be the hero's name, but it looks like his working title was later changed to Abyssal Underlord, though the first part was dropped for unknown reasons, leaving us with good old Underlord. With all of that out of the way, Vrogros's look in Dota 2 is very similar to Asgalor's, although they landed on a beige color, and he's covered in emerald spikes, which is somewhat explained in his lore. Deep below the surface of the world lay unknown wonders and horrors, and even deeper than that stands the obsidian city of Azayog, home of the Abyssal Horde and their brutal underlord, Vrogros. Armed by the monstrous forge masters of his kind, and well practiced in the arts of the Dark Rift, Vrogros is able to conjure forth flame and crippling malice through the twist between worlds. He always seeks to expand his empire, destroying or enslaving all he encounters, but the lands offered by the subterranean are few, so he's turned his sights upward. His first wave of invaders already made quick work of a few doomed legions, and now he stands ready to step into the sunlit world above to announce his coming reign. Those who face the Underlord will bow and pay tribute, or be crushed where they stand. His lore is continued in Legion Commander's story, confirming that the Underlord's first target was the city of Stonehall, and his first encounter was with the Bronze Legion. His entrance is actually portrayed in the final page of the Tip of the Spear comic. Although he ends up losing the duel against Tresden, he was able to lay the city in ruin and left few survivors. The Underlord also briefly appears in the short comic Ascension. While the story focuses on Queen of Pain persuading a demon to borrow his power, Vrogros does show up in a panel. It seems that he, Shadow Fiend, and Queen of Pain's brother Bakor are in alliance with each other, and are looking to spread their respective empires in the Abyssal Plane. This reveals to us a couple of things. Underlord has a pre-existing relationship with Nevermore, which was never brought up before through voice lines, items, or anything. And also, he's apparently a part of the Court of Restule. This is a faction of demons which was first brought up in Artifact, and later expanded upon in Dota Underlords, which, by the way, is a very confusing title for the game, especially since Vrogros doesn't show up in it, and the Underlords refer to a completely separate group of characters. But this comic is the first indication of this alliance. Pretty goofy stuff, but I'm glad that our Abyssal Commander is getting some more recognition in the story. His voice work is also done pretty well. If I were to cast an underground demon, TJ Ramini certainly gets the job done. The content itself is kind of generic, but endearing in its own way.
I come to conquer. Your guts will spill. I know just the place to mount their skulls.
Although it doesn't relate to Underlord directly, Vrogros played an instrumental role in creating an international meme-tastic moment. In the third game of Secret vs Fnatic in ESL 1's Katowice 2018 tournament, the final moments of the game were playing out in Fnatic's base. It looked like they were on the verge of losing, but a quick-thinking Dark Rift into Secret's base allowed for a turnaround. What's really important about this is the Filipino duo of Lon and Duno, who casted this game, went off on a series of sleep-deprived gems, which would later be immortalized in future Battle Pass chat wheels.
Naku, lakad mo, latak matatang, lakad matatang!
Normally.
Ekos Lama Jama! Tapos ang boxing! Iisama! Uy! Teka lang,
iba to.
Teka lang,
Sir Chip!
Oh my God, Sir Chip! Panating victory! 10K tayo ako times 3! 30K! Easiest money of my life! Grabe!
Underlord's introduction wasn't tied to a specific patch, but he did come with a few changes straight out of the gate. Firestorm now creates visual effects at the targeted area during the cast time, which is visible to allies, and the first wave's damage happens immediately upon cast, instead of being delayed slightly. The burn damage over time was also changed from a flat DPS to a percentage of their max health per second. Pit of Malice also shows a visual effect during the cast time, just like Firestorm for the consistency. Atrophy Aura had its attack damage bonus duration rescaled, and gains damage when a Meepo clone dies near him. So, take that, Meepo. And Dark Rift can target player-controlled units, in addition to receiving double-click support, which targets the team's fountain if done so. A lot of these were quality of life buffs, and they were all welcome changes that modernized Underlord to make him feel smoother. In 7.00, a lot of changes happened to Pit of Malice, which includes it no longer piercing spell immunity, no longer interrupting channeling spells, no longer dealing 100 damage, and its root mechanics were changed as well. It now roots every 3.5 seconds instead of only once upon entering the pit, and because of this, the root duration, the pit duration, and pit radius were all adjusted to make up for it. Underlord also gained some talents here, although they weren't anything too special. In 7.06, Underlord gained his first Aghanim Scepter upgrade, causing Atrophy Aura's bonus damage to be granted to nearby allied heroes for half the values, and it increases the bonus damage duration as well. In 7.07, he received an updated set of talents which, for the most part, is unremarkable, but that early Firestorm damage per wave is really strong for farming purposes, and that level 25 Firestorm talent is a throwback to one of the older Firestorm iterations. This talent really makes him a slow and steady type character, and if you let him get to this point, your defeat will be slow and painful. In 7.20, Atrophy Aura now grants Underlord permanent attack damage for every nearby dying enemy hero, and although it no longer pierces spell immunity, its radius was increased to 1200. And to emphasize what I said earlier, this buff makes his slow and steady style all the more pronounced. The longer a game goes on, it's inevitable that Underlord will be a huge pain to deal with. In case that weren't enough, in 7.22D, one of his level 15 talents was changed to +7 Atrophy Aura permanent attack damage bonus per hero, making his threatening aura grow much faster. Similar to his gameplay style, it really seems like Vrogros only gets stronger over time. He's durable, reliable, but can still dish out a ton of pain. And the same piece of advice can always be applied to him no matter when you pick him up. As long as you're patient, you'll soon go from the Underlord to the #1 Durlord. Underlord is big and slow, but he'll make sure you feel every piece of his damage. Whether it's through raining down a hail of fire, or trapping the innocent in a pit, Vrogros is fun for the whole family. From all the joy you bring from teleporting across the map, and all the lives you save from certain death, he truly is a dark gift. I'm Dennis the Tall, and that was the history of Underlord. Thank you very much to Papa Steel for the magnificent artwork, and for everyone who submitted footage to me. If you would like to contribute in the future, please keep an eye on my YouTube community tab, or any one of my other social medias. Last time I asked, what's something in your life you wish you could multicast? A lot of you just want more money. Hey, we're all gonna make it one day, don't worry. Breadhead went meta with the question, and multicasted his answers. Pretty sneaky one there. And lastly, a lot of you guys want to multicast my videos. I'm trying my hardest, I swear. Anywho, that's it for now. Like I said at the beginning, I just started streaming on Twitch, so please follow me if you haven't already. On top of that, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, join the $5 tier on Patreon to vote on future episodes, and just be safe out there. See you soon.